Note that this video has spoilers for the subject. Put off by how long this video is, don't worry, I try to jam-pack my videos with as much content and as much detail as I possibly can. Anything I feel I can comment on and that I feel you might be interested in, I pretty much put in the video. I try not to repeat myself and talk fairly fast.
Well, I guess that might have been it for that bulb. I am planning on replacing it. It's gone out at least once before recently. Anyway, the strangers too pray at night. Let's see, starting with the intro. There we go. And yes, I am still having to do videos in this manner. I don't have a lot of notes for this one, but I'm sitting because I apparently overworked my knee in my eagerness to improve my back, so I'm taking it easy on it. Now, and again, I am not bored and I am not falling asleep, though I am kind of getting to the point where I'm starting to be tired. But I don't think this video will be very long anyway. Now, I have not reviewed the first one. I may not. I probably will just put what I have to say about it in this video, and most of it, I suppose I shouldn't say all of it yet, but most of it probably be in notes taken before watching. I don't have a lot to say that isn't said in WatchMojo's top 5 scariest moments from The Strangers. I have watched the film several times, including on the 16th to prepare for watching this. Now, by the time I knew this movie was coming to theaters here, I had already planned out all the Saturdays leading up to Infinity War and, doing new thoughts videos on every Phase 1 MCU movie other than the Hulk movie and the first Iron Man movie, and I don't like to review more than one thing per Saturday. I have been on a real Brian De Palma kick lately. I love the way he uses the camera, Black Dot, Let There Be Light, Black Dahlia, let's see, Black Dahlia, Snake Eyes, Mission Impossible, Raising Cain, The Untouchables, Scarface, Carrie, Obsession. So yeah, just rewatched The Untouchables and fairly recently rewatched the Godfather trilogy. De Niro's Al Capone, Michael Corleone played by Al Pacino. If you combine the two Al's last names, you'd have El Cappuccino. Moving on. Notes taken while watching. The movie's 1 hour and 18 minutes, not counting the end credits. I hadn't been told anything about a post-credit scene, so I didn't assume. Yeah, so I didn't stay past the end credits, past the start of the end credits. And I think the opening is pretty decent. The car driving up and got the pop music and very typical for a slasher. I saw someone, maybe, I don't remember who, say that this is basically more of a slasher, an 80s slasher homage, where the first one was more of a 1970s homage. And yeah, as such, we have the opening kill and more than one person, as is often the case with that. And as not always the case, as is not always the case in those, here it is actually, yeah, it is a plot point, it affects the rest of the movie. You know, it turns out that the people killed were the uncle and aunt, and let's see, and it's a huge departure from the first one, which did not kill anybody anywhere near that early. And I think I already mentioned, yeah, that, you know, still off-screen killing. Excuse me. There we go. Yeah, every so often I'll forget all about doing that. So, yes, and we see the main family leave their home rather than the only location the movie takes place in, like the first. Well, you know, that one did briefly show the wedding, but here it is legitimately, and again, it's very typical 80s slasher, you know. Okay, everyone, let's just briefly repeat what everybody here already knows. We are going to a particular location, and, you know, there's a particular reason we're going to that location, and everyone in the audience who's watched one of these movies before knows that either we'll never get there, or when we get there, bad things will start happening. And, you know, Kinsley is very much a teen girl, and again, I have a huge amount of sympathy for teenagers. I think they're, you know, of all the groups that it's still somehow okay to hate, yeah, they have it really tough. I've gone into detail on that before. What I want to say here is I appreciate that her characterization fits this kind of, you know, she's an archetype, which is pretty frequent in slasher movies. And there's also a, what was I going to say? And at the same time, she is also an actual person. You believe that, you know, yeah, this is how teenage girls sometimes behave, and she is a complete person. Over the course of the movie, she clearly does love her family, even though some people would look at early scenes and say she must not. Excuse me. And, you know, the siblings don't get along when in the car. I really like the, you know, queef. What's queef? Seriously, what's queef? It's, yeah, they're very much, all four of them are very much the archetype that they, yeah. And, you know, because of various delays, they're late to the uncle's resort. You know, it's also a cute idea, this thing, you know, it's off season, so he invited them there so they could have some fun without having to pay for all this stuff, and be able to do it by themselves rather than surrounded by tourists. And, you know, I'm fairly certain there are at least some people who run resorts like this who will do stuff like that for friends and family. You know, they're not necessarily gonna end up losing a ton of money if just a few people, you know, every so often get freebies there. You know, as far as I understand. Anyway, I'm not saying they should do it for everyone, obviously, but anyway. I sound so sleepy, I'm sorry. It's also, it adds a little more variety to the setting than the first one had, which again, not a dig on the first one. I think there's very little, most of the stuff about the first one is very intentional choice. you know, it's one of those things where if you don't like certain choices made, there's a reasonable chance that what you don't like is just the way they wanted to make the movie in like overall, and that was, you know, which is fine. It's just, you know, it really sucks when someone went out, you know, went out to make a movie that was supposed to be a certain way, but because of various reasons, it didn't turn out that way. So it's, you know, it didn't turn out like that. But when someone puts effort into and makes the movie that they want to make, that they're promising, you know, then it's fine to dislike it, but you may not be criticized. I've gone into this in other videos. And but yeah, you know, they're late to his place, so they're not surprised that he is not there to greet them. And you know, Kinsley's being sent off to boarding school. She doesn't want to, but she did something wrong. It's vague. We don't know what. Similar to, you know, in the first one. I mean, basically, we know that they. We don't know exactly. I don't know. I guess you could argue that in the first one, it's clear. Yeah. Now. Yeah, and you know, Kinsey's like with the other girls who took part in this, you know, did the thing wrong. They're not being sent away, and you know, Cindy is like, well, I'm not their mother, I'm your mother. It really it captures. I didn't feel like either side was being demonized. Really appreciated, and yeah, it is genuinely. This is that's how it is. And you know, Cindy even says, you know, I wish my mother had done it for me when I was your age. I also made mistakes. And yeah, it is, it clearly is out of, she genuinely thinks it will help Kinsley. And is it Kinsey? Kins, I think the was the nickname. And I think the father's name was Mike. Mike actually almost eats the Chinese takeout in the fridge. It's such a dad thing to do. It's like, well, seems fine. You know, it's been in a refrigerator. Yeah, it might have been in the refrigerator for like weeks. You know, it might be really, really nasty. Please don't eat it. You know, I mean, it's that you're not. I don't know exactly what bracket they're in, but they don't appear to be so poor that they have to like rummage through other people's garbage to eat. So yeah, I'm pretty sure you can afford new Chinese takeout, dude. It's yeah. I feel the movie really, you know, the family dynamics are set up nicely and they're credible. And Kinsey leaves the trailer. The parents send Luke after her, figuring if they follow her, it will only make things worse. And it's nice enough because at this point, they don't have any real reason to think that there's like psycho stalker killers out there. It's just, you know, okay, so this slightly weird girl was like lost, I guess, around here. You know, it's you know, you don't that's not enough for you to say like nobody leaves this room. And you know, where in the first movie there was a lot of screen time where it's one character who's alone and thus not saying anything. In this, it's often two characters paired off, and they talk to each other at least some of the time. And unlike a lot of slashers, it's not obnoxious. You know, maybe it's a sequel change, but it's a good change. What the first did worked well there, but I don't think it would work well again in a sequel. Let's see. And the very gory corpse hinted at fairly early on. You know, realize it's the uncle. Early in the film, the family members jump scare each other a lot. I appreciate that it then moves beyond that. And the characters know that the killers are killers fairly early on. And the killers use weapons sooner. and threaten and show the weapons off sooner. And Dollface breaks down the door and kills the mother right in front of the daughter, and you know, I forget her name at the moment, but I'd say the mother is probably the most recognizable actor of the four of them. So it's a good twist to have her, excuse me, be killed off this early. You know, and as, excuse me, as the first of the main characters, very Hitchcock psycho. And they get out the revolver and they load it, and early on, an object is thrown at the front window of the car and makes it crash, you know, fairly violently into the trailer, and the father is impaled in the car. And the killers are on screen and clearly showing themselves to the family more than in the first one. And the masked man stabs the father with the ice pick. You know, seems like he's got like this thing driving him to it. It's fairly average though. It's kind of a basic instinct, if you know. And you know, we're left with just the two teenagers alive. And I quite like the Pop Goes the Weasel thing with Dollface right down there. You know, she's got the knife. She manages to stab Kinsey. Give me the gun. I will shoot her. I forget what happened to the gun after that, actually, because they don't really have it later. He uses the golf club not long after them, yeah. And she blames herself, of course, and Luke is like, you did not get them killed. Contrived writing would have happened either way. And all three of them comes, you know, from different directions, and golf club to the face by the pool, and Luke is like stabbing the dark-haired one to death by the pool. I feel like the dark-haired one didn't get used all that much in this one. I don't know, maybe it's just me. And they have a pool inception fight. It's cool. And Luke is stabbed and left for dead, and the camera holds on him, and we were sitting there wondering if he's going to succumb to his wounds or drown first, you know, which of the two, yeah. And, you know, she's like, no, please don't run me, you know, and it turns out to be a cop, you know. And Dollface attacks, and she becomes a cop killer, and Kinsey's like, better you than me. And, you know, grabs the, you know, shotgun, kicks her out, gets the shotgun loose, you know, blasts her right in the chest, and then she goes out, you know, and like, you know, and you know, and then proceeds to shoot her in the face with it. And let's see. And really, when the sister walks up to Dollface, I just wanted her to be like, oh, is Tamara here? I'll show you Tamara, you know. Boom. And she asks why, and the answer is, why not? Ah, the rarely invoked why not defense of Serial Killer. I like the use of pop classics. And the car is on fire as it chases her, and part of the mask is burned off, and his face is burned. It's like, is this a Jason prequel or something? And he's killed by a glass shard, and or seemingly, and then they fight on the car, and baseball to the face. She really should have been in Little League. In the trailer, the masked man drives up next to Kinsey in the car. That didn't happen in my theater's version, but apparently it's only, you know, same as in my theater's version, there was no Deadpool teaser at the start of Logan. Now, and, you know, hospital room, and, you know, they're both still alive, although he's, you know, in hospital bed, and got the knock at the door, and, you know, there's this looper video that says, you know, it'll explain the ending. If you're watching it just to find out about the knock, just skip to the very end. I thought that the whole video was going to be about the knock, but instead it's going over the things leading up to it, which I didn't feel was particularly necessary. Whatever. The video says that the idea is she'll never trust a stranger again. You know, it's probably a nurse or something knocking. I hope that that's the case. the idea that like the Masked Man is still somewhere alive, or one of the other two. I'm sorry, that's just going a little too far, in my opinion, because if they're that impossible to kill, I think more should have been established about that earlier. You know, there should have been something, you know, maybe we should have seen something happen to one of them, and then they're off screen for a while, and then when they come back on screen, we're like, oh, so did that not really happen? And they're like, you know, maybe one of them is like stabbed in the side, and you're like, oh, so you're gonna bleed out, and then they reappear, and it's like, did that not happen? Or was it like a flash forward? What? You know, and the character like lifts their shirt to, and we see that the wound is still there and it hasn't like healed at all. It's like still bloody, maybe almost like blood spurts coming out of it, but nope, doesn't slow down that one of the strangers at all. You know, okay, then you have, but it's just not been established that they're that impossible. I mean, they're difficult to kill in this, but anyway, the that brings us to, you know, maybe there are more than the three strangers, and they found her, which wouldn't have any setup in the film as it is. It feels sequel baity, and I think most of the people in the theater also thought it was supposed to be like a twist, not an indication that she'll never trust a stranger again. I think it should have been played slightly differently if that was what they were going for. Like, there's a certain horror movie that I'm not gonna say which, but it's a classic, and it's directed by a brilliant director, which ends with seemingly the killer is completely dead, and you know, someone like imagines that suddenly the killer is alive again and attacking the character, and then they wake up in like hospital. I forget if it's a hospital bed. They wake up in a bed, and the people around them are like, no, it's okay, it's okay. You know, the not all of South Park are like the Trump. Anyway, the it's just a dream. You know, it didn't actually happen. I think that could have worked if like there's a knock, and then like she sits up, and then she like turns to the side, and you know, Masked Man is there and like stabs him in the chest, and then immediately she wakes up in the chair again, and like the door has already opened, so she thought she heard a knock or something, and like a nurse is standing in front of her and like, are you all right? You like you practically jumped out of the chair when I opened the door. Are you all right? You know. But yeah, I watched a different video where the guy basically said, you know, maybe it is one of them having come back to life, or maybe there's going to be a third movie and it's not following up on that, but it's like a midquel set between the first and the second. I think that could work, and I mean, it is one of those things where this movie didn't really have to be set in the year it came out, which it kind of seems like it might be. The first one didn't have to be set when it was technically, you know, but and I'm not entirely sure either movie really does say something specific. It has to be fairly recent, you know. It can't have been like forever ago because they have smartphones. But yeah, the you know, if you make it, I will come. I will go to the theater, and I will almost definitely do a video about it. I really enjoy these movies, and that takes us to before watching. Notes taken before watching. Okay. Yeah, and the first of these are going to be from the first movie, not this movie. Now, yeah. The location is very important. Sound is vital, and everything echoes in the house. Yeah, wow, that's really a huge difference. When we really think about how much the first one is about these knocks at the door, and like, yeah. And part of it is this thing of being trapped in your own house, terrorized by someone, and three masked people. And it's a very creepy movie. It's filmed and edited just right. It uses isolation and solitude well. And yeah, the various noises, knocking on doors, scraping metal against metal or the ground, other sounds you can't see the source of, and a pleasant song playing or caught in record scratch or the like. And there are some developments. It's not the exact same situation from start to finish, although there could be more. The main characters lose their cell phones, and the three attackers take off their masks, but the audience do not see their faces. The movie ends with the protagonists being stabbed to death. And let's see. Yeah, and I noted that from the first knock on the door to the very last stab is 1 hour and 2 minutes of screen time, and in total it's like 80 minutes or something. And there are chunks of the film where you don't see at least one of the protagonists, maybe the attacker already got them, or simply because they're far away from the summer home. It feels like the movie is almost trapped at the summer home. The wedding thing is flashback, so yeah, it almost feels like a documentary, and the documentary filmmakers were trapped in the summer home. So yeah, and that's also a thing. The second one cuts back and forth between the several characters. For a lot of the movie, there's at least two. Either two individuals that are separated, or there are two groups, two pairs, or one pair and one individual, and it cuts between them. And again, I find both are effective for their movie. And it's about being attacked where you feel safe in the home, and yeah, them leaving the house other than for trying the car is just too stupid. The part where Scott Speedman has got the shotgun and he's like, "You stay here, I am going to go out there and try to shoot her," instead of just waiting where you are. It's not like, I'm not saying it would have fit the movie, but let's hypothetically say that the strangers set fire to the house, and the people inside are like, "What are the fire extinguishers? I don't know where the fire extinguishers are," and so they run out, and then they're attacked. But instead, they just run out because that makes it easier for the killers. That's how the writer wanted it to work out. Stupid decisions made, and just, I know it's in a lot of slashers, but it's just annoying. And the first one, on rewatch, it's not that effective since it is quote unquote essentially uneventful, intentionally so. Halloween 1978 remains so for a lot of it, and then it unleashes Michael, and I'm gonna be making some more comparisons between that and the first Strangers movie. And yeah, here are some things I noted before watching this movie about this movie. A few more outside locations, and all close to the house still. And from the trailer, I think it looked like it was going to be bigger in typical sequel fashion. More fighting back, more outside stuff. I think the movie did a good job. It's one of those things. I think the ending of the first one feels a little flat, because ultimately it is kind of, well, that was kind of what I more or less expected to end up happening. It's not some big twist, but it's difficult. Horror movie endings are really difficult, because if it doesn't end up with a slasher killer getting the victims, then you have to figure out, well, why don't they? And some movies do really brilliantly with that, you know. I mean, any that I mention is just gonna be spoiling that movie or franchise. Anyway, yeah, you know, but a lot of movies, it's just, well, you know, we can't have it go exactly as you'd expect, or, you know, the studio wanted less of a downer ending. But yeah, so the first one, it's not a big surprise, and I do appreciate that the movie still really holds back. A lot of movies would have had the ending be this big bloodbath, but instead, it's still holding back. I really appreciate that. But if they had had this movie also just be, and then the strangers kill every major character, that would have been really boring. I really appreciate that they fight back, that they start fighting back sortily, and they do still make some stupid decisions, but they do make a lot of fairly smart and logical ones, and yeah. And you know, John Carpenter is really obvious inspiration for the second one. And, you know, 2 adults and 2 teenagers, still 3 masked attackers. And actually, you know, counting the opening kill couple, there are twice as many, there are twice as many non-masked men in the second movie as in the first movie. You know, the first one has the friend show up, making it 3. Second one, 6 people, you know, 2 adults, 2 teenage kids, and then the aunt and uncle. And yeah, that was what I was. And you know, in both movies, you know, First Contact, you know, in response to, I don't know if you want to say that the killers actually anticipated it, a la Jason X, but yeah, in response to adults about to have sex, but I would figure that these 2 are married. I mean, they've been together for a number of years, and no one says, why didn't you get married or something, you know. In the first one, we know for sure these 2 are not married, so it's premarital sex, you know, which slasher killers punish. But in this, there isn't, yeah. And, you know, you've seen the trailer, the masked people got all the cells in one place to destroy them, and I'm just like, how? I don't know one person under the age of 45 who can relax without knowing their phone is on their person at all times. And yeah, I mean, I guess, you know, now having watched the movie, I mean, the basic idea is that the 2 adults put their phones on that table to, like, you know, for solidarity. And they asked the 2 teenagers, just before the, you know, just this once, can we please everybody put away our phones? And so the 2 teenagers put their phones on the table. And then when Kinsey leaves, she doesn't take her phone with her, and Luke leaves not long after, also leaving his phone. And thus, all 4 phones are there. And I get that, I see how you got there, but I still, I don't know. But it's the, you know, cell phones are the bane of the modern horror movie, because it is like, oh, why aren't you calling for help? Now, between using I Think We're Alone Now and showing people stalking and killing, I'm pretty sure the trailer for this movie is the kind of thing that Giovanni Ribisi's character in the Ted movies jacks off to. Now, let's see here. I copied in my original written review from 2010 when I first watched it. And I'm not sure how much I'm going to quote from this, but yeah, the you know, the first movie, it does a great job of building up atmosphere very carefully, very gradually, very expertly. But once the movie has its record, it doesn't really know where to go, and the latter half of the movie is very padded and full of cliches of the genre. And yeah, the conclusion is empty and forgettable. And yeah, we've got jump scares. No, don't go in there. And yeah, they've worked before, so using such as a standby instead of coming up with something new and original. And they're easy and cheap to use, so you're not risking anything. And, you know, I'm not saying every movie has to be realistic, but just, yeah. Yeah, I do think it is worth noting. Neither of these movies are realistic, and that's also something where I think this second one really embraces that and really goes out, you know, where the first one, it is, you know, a lot of the time, it is basically realistic, and then you have those little things that are supposed to just really creep you out because they happen within a realistic seeming world, but you can't explain them. You can't say, well, that's just, somehow like these guys are teleporting and they somehow know where to be in order to, and that's again, that's also something in the original Halloween. Michael does not teleport, but he does have somehow know where to go so that he can keep watching and stalking the people he is stalking without suddenly like being like caught like deer in headlights, some kind of thing where with one of the people he's stalking just staring right at him, somehow he always manages to be in the right place at the right time. And let's see. This seems to be more or less. Let's see. I like both Tyler and Speedman. And I like their relationship. The a lot of horror movies don't really bother, and you can see why. It's not really, both of these movies, if you re-edit them, you can cut away every single mention of what's really going on. Why they're, why is Kinsey upset? What is going to happen after the events of this movie if everybody had survived anyway? You could cut that all out. It would be kind of awkward to watch, but yeah. Because ultimately it doesn't really affect, it just, for the sake of the movie, all it's important for is to get all four people in this one spot at this particular time, and that's, yeah, but it also adds character and fleshes out the characters, and that's also something I think the second one, again, it's not something the first one could have done, but in the second one, once Cindy is dead, and the two teenagers talk about what she was like and how she would react when they did stuff they shouldn't have and such, and like bond over that. That's such a great exchange. It's so yeah, and that's something a lot of movies don't bother to have that, and it really adds something. That is what it would look like. That is what it looks like when someone has a fight, and then one of the people ends up dead. And it's fairly cliche in cinema. In preparation for Infinity War, I rewatched the Spider-Man movies, all 6 solo Spider-Man movies, and yeah, both the first. Yeah, the first of the first 2 tries at Spider-Man, the Raimi version and the Amazing Spider-Man. Yeah, they managed to, but I had a fight with Uncle Ben and then he died, and so it's not new as such, but it's still good to have in this, yeah, and. Yeah, it'd be nice to have better logic in the characters' actions. Too much of what they do is purely because the script says so. And let's see. And it's impressive how mysterious it dares to be, not explaining every single thing, where it's, our brain says, I must understand this because that will take away the anxiety. Once I understand it, I won't be scared of it anymore. And thus a lot of horror movies explain. Sometimes it works out well, but both of these movies, they don't explain why the masked men do what they do, why the strangers hunt and stalk, and the fact that we don't, I do think if they do make a third one, they probably have to add a little something, but I think it could just more than just a couple of words, more than because you were home, more than why not, just a little bit more. But I don't think they have to go like really deep and such, but just some kind of, I don't know, maybe it would work with a third one without any explanation, but you can only go so many movies or video games with like into a concept without explaining a lot, I would say, before it just gets annoying that there's no explanation. Now, yeah, and to get more into the 1978 Halloween, which I rewatched on the 26th. With a very few key exceptions, Michael Myers does not do anything that is truly physically superhuman. He hides, he waits, he stalks, he attacks, but he doesn't teleport, he doesn't get into somewhere that's locked. What's that noise? And before the ending, we find it hard to believe that he really is the monster that Donald Pleasance tells us that he is. And I'm not saying that every movie about stalkers has to be like that, but for comparison, I find that it makes a stronger movie when we're talking about realism. I'm not asking for realism like a Paranormal Activity movie, and one strength that Halloween has that Strangers 1 does as well is a clear setup of characters and geography, and then use that so that we know where something's going on, who someone is, etc. Albeit Strangers 1 has much smaller cast and location or setting. And and some would say that Halloween 1978 isn't that much more competently made than the Strangers 1, but Halloween 1978 was fresh. By 2008, Strangers 1 was not. And yeah, so this one also does sets up the characters and geography and then uses it. I don't think, I don't know, I guess, yeah, when Kinsey and them are lost by the trailers and don't quite know where to go, we, the audience, are also having trouble teaming out where they are, but that's it. Other than that, we don't have difficulty keeping up with, and again, the characters moving apart from each other tends to make sense. It's not that they just, for no reason, decide to. Anyway, I am obviously going to get some sleep relatively soon, but I had a lot of fun watching, a lot of fun recording. Hope you had fun watching this and the movie.